I'm James Ead, and I am introducing Roar, episode 5. And my guest, my co-host is Rick Rosner. Rick, Roar is basically telling us to speak up and speak out because we're not happy with the way things are going in our country today. And everyone has to raise their voice and be heard. Is there something that's been going on recently that makes you want to speak up and speak out?
Yeah, I just saw this 10 minutes ago. A
Oh,
tweet based on a New Yorker article. The National Cancer Institute hasn't made a single grant this fiscal year.
wow.
So I was at my doctor yesterday for my annual checkup, and I like asking uh, my doctor about the pace of AI and medical research. Is it accelerating? Because we're living in a time of technological wonder. And he says, no, it has slowed down in America because Trump has cut off, funding for medical research. So we're looking at 4 lost years of while the rest of the world goes, we'll have to turn to the rest of the world for advancements.
Right.
And I'm 65, about to be 66. I don't have 4 years to give up in medical advancements.
Yeah, I hear that, and also AI is health is one of the greatest, most promising aspects of AI. What it can do to help correlate all the information that's out there and present the data and turn it into information for the doctors to assess and to compare. I was at a conference, and one of the guys that was getting an award there was for oral cancer research. He was using AI to take the photograph of his patients and compare it to a large database of people to determine what stage the cancer was in, and how treatable it was, and all of that kind of stuff. And so this was in November of last year, so people were applauding these types of advancements. And if we don't have those types of advancements to applaud in this country, it's a crying shame. Because
Yeah, and then those people, it's not just lost years, it's lost researchers who say fuck it and they go to other countries that treat them better.
yeah, that's a brain drain that's going
So,
on. Yeah.
uh, so we're in the era of huge data sets. We figured out everything simple to figure out about the world, but now we've got these huge data sets and too big for our minds to necessarily find the correlations. So we
Right.
need AI. So there are 15 cameras, public surveillance cameras, ring cameras, whatever, for every 100 Americans in the US. And they generate a huge amount of data. And also, there are, our text messages are being surveilled, by various federal agencies looking for, people talking about bombs and stuff like that.
Sure.
But without AI to stitch all that data together, there's no way that people can look at all of it. And Anthropic has been fighting with the
Yes.
the Department of War, I guess they call it now, because the Department of War and the government wanted to use Anthropic to spy on Americans, and Anthropic, a huge AI company that they're the ones behind Claude AI, they said, no, thank you. We don't want to spy on Americans. And now they've been blackballed by the US government. And so they're suing the government. But we should be using AI for medicine and to make advancements. And instead, we're getting, the government wants to use it to abuse Americans.
Yeah. And what's the phrase that was it mRNA research that was into cancer that was very, very promising?
Well, that's some of it. I mean, there's CRISPR research. I mean, there's a bunch of areas. So the way you fight cancer is, once you have it, is to train your body to see it and grab it, because every malignant cell has a characteristic shape and your immune system learns how to find when stuff is in your body that shouldn't be there. It learns how to grab onto it. Feels, you've got these feeler cells that feel the cells, and if they feel a bad shape, then they can grab it and haul it away to be destroyed, or engulf it, I guess, destroy it right on the spot. And there are some cancers that have easy shapes and some cancers that have hard shapes to feel and grab. And AI, among the things it does, was to tell cells how to fold in different ways so that they can feel and grab particular kinds of cancer, because cancer isn't one disease. It's like 150 different frickin' diseases.
And always mutating. Yes.
Yeah. So that's one place where big data, AI they can use AI to figure out the instructions for folding protein, which is what pretty much everything's made out of, into any possible shape, because you need those shapes to be the grabbers. And if we're not paying, and that's like such promising research.
Right. Yeah, the brain drain goes to people, because of the anti-immigrant status of the current administration. They're not accepting people to come in with the visas to help companies do their research.
Here's what they sorry, I get worked up, but what they did was they said you can have your H-1B people. Those are your talented scientists and from other countries, but you have to pay now $100,000 a year. On top of what you're paying them, you have to pay the government $100,000 to keep them here.
It's a tax. Yeah.
Trump hates Americans, except for the money he can suck out of them.
Yeah. And, all of his policies are helping not just the 1%, but the 0.1%. The billionaires are amassing incredible amount of wealth.
Yeah, and they're the ones who can afford concierge government. Yeah. They can order up, whatever laws they want within reason. Though actually the Congress is frozen right now, which is kind of, it's not terrible. Some guy, a representative, just abandoned in Congress, just said, I'm not going to be a Republican anymore. I'm going to be independent.
Right.
Which brings us closer to the insane possibility that the Republicans could lose control of the House even before the midterm elections. If a couple more Republicans said F it to
the defectors, yeah. And I think of it as growing a spine, because they've been afraid that Trump they will lose their primaries against someone who's even more MAGA than they are. And that's no longer the case. More and more of them are waking up that the Trump endorsement is no longer paying dividends. In fact, it's in some cases something that they have to overcome. Yeah. And it's a minus rather than a plus now. And I think that once they wake up to that, they will grow a spine.
So, but this show is about making noise and getting attention. And I don't know how to I didn't know how to get attention before things got so crazy.
Right.
And now, I mean, you and I, we do this show, we go on Pod TV. You can, if you want, you go on Pod TV and yell about this stuff 7 hours, 7 different shows a week. You can just, I mean, and I don't know, does it help? It makes my wife nervous. She goes, "What are we going to do when you get arrested?"
Right.
I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm just saying that Trump is a terrible president. Yes. And people have been arrested for less, or denied entry to the country for less.
Well, it's an autocracy that first they put the clamps on the press. The freedom of the press is in danger. with Trump. You know, he called them the enemy of the people. And then the individuals that are speaking up get in autocratic societies, they get incarcerated. And we're seeing some of that beginning now, the Department of Justice being weaponized. And so people are afraid now to speak up. And so one of the things we're doing on this show and others is to try to get people to convince them, the more people to speak up, the less chance that it's just going to be you that is targeted. So, you know, it's part of my feeling of my responsibility, my civic duty to speak up and speak out and to inspire others to do so. And so, you know, however little effect we're having, even if it's a marginal impact, if it's any impact at all, that's a positive in our society, because what's at stake is the preservation of our democracy so that it doesn't fall into autocratic rule. And, you know, the democracy that we've been given, we inherited, that people fought and died for, these are the types of things that we take for granted sometimes, and they can't be. The democracy over the course of the history of the world, it's fragile and can be lost. And these are the types of things we don't think it can happen here, but of course it can happen here. It has happened elsewhere. It can happen here.
There was a famous novel in the 1930s called It Can't Happen Here, which is about exactly this happening.
Right.
And of course, that needs to be updated, but we really don't need it to be updated because we're seeing it in real time.
Yes.
But it's a race between, so Trump in his second term has more leverage than he did in his first term, because he's got the Senate, he's got the House, he's got the Supreme Court, he's got a cabinet that doesn't say no to him. He's got the press, the media. So it's a race between, but he's an idiot and an a-hole, and he doesn't use his power he does a lot of dumb, horrible stuff with it that if people knew about it would piss them off. So it's a race between people getting pissed off at the horrible crap he does and the horrible crap he's doing. It's like this war is, you know, it's most wars start off, at least the US wars start off in response to some other country doing some horrible crap. And to us, you know, Pearl Harbor, Japan blows up, you know, Hawaii. You know, I mean, you can argue about, okay, Vietnam was, you know, we stepped in on behalf of France, got sick of trying to you know, save South Vietnam from North Vietnam. So we switched out with them. So I guess that wasn't really anybody doing, but we were afraid of the march of communism across Southeast Asia.
Domino effect. I remember that. Yeah.
But when you think about, you know, the wars where we, you know, seemed the most justified, we were, you know, defending, you know, some good stuff. And so a lot of wars start off with popular support. After 9/11,
of course, right.
Bush's approval went to the highest number of any president in history. He had 95% approval because the country just pulled together behind him. And then he kind of wasted that approval on, you know, I think the war in Afghanistan was justifiable. You know, we can argue about, you know, how it was done and everything. The war, the second Gulf War, the war to take down Saddam Hussein in Iraq, that was a garbage war built on lies. If he just stuck to Afghanistan, I feel like.
Sorry.
But in any case, these wars, most of the wars start off with positive net public support.
Most of the time that we, you know, but clearly this particular military operation, as they're calling it, is a war of choice. It's not a war of necessity. Yeah, and there are many times when you know, even in the rise of Nazi Germany, you know, the people were saying there was a a great sense of isolationism in this country because they were saying it's in war overseas. We don't have to participate. But of course, we had to participate. And if we had not, the world would look very differently now. So these things sometimes are not as obvious. This strong sense of isolationism is rising again in this country. It's not our problem. But these actions, including the actions in Venezuela, where we started murdering people in boats, kidnapping their president, seizing their cargo in the oceans, which is an act of piracy, breaking international law. This war of choice in Iran is breaking international law as well. And these types of things are not that, you can make the argument that it was necessary because if Iran developed nuclear weapons, then, who knows what would happen. Well, North Korea has nuclear weapons today. And so, what we do is try to have diplomatic solutions. And if there's any action, any direct sign of action, then we would be justified in interceding. But, we were told by Trump that the weapons and the nuclear plants and the ability to have missiles armed was obliterated previously. And now he's on the air contradicting himself that the war, minute to minute almost, the war in Iran is a complete success. It's,
it's almost over. He says we're almost done. And today was the biggest day of bombing, I guess, yet. This is day 11. Yeah. So public approval.
They're dug in for the long haul too. He says minutes later,
Yeah, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. And when
was he lying to us then, or is he lying to us now?
So let's talk about support for the war. According to which survey, support varies by survey from 21 to 37% among Americans. Disapproval of the war ranges from 56 to 59%. So most wars start off with public net approval. This thing's already underwater, and as the wars go on, then you lose support. So this war started without majority support.
Right.
And if Trump were smart, he would declare victory, which he kind of did yesterday, and get out. And they have accomplished some stuff. We've sunk their entire Navy. We've sunk more than 40 Iranian ships. We've degraded their Air Force. We've caused them to deplete a lot of their missiles. But does that mean anything in practical terms? Because Iran supports they support Hamas, bad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, bad, the Houthis in Yemen, bad. All these bad semi-terrorist actors. Will our action against Iran make them so broke that they can't do that anymore? I doubt it. I don't know.
Well, the thing is in chess we have this phrase we call the end game, and most people can relate to it. Is that when you enter into a military conflict, you have an end game in mind. You have a result that you can then say we accomplished it, and there is no such end game here. When do we know that we've accomplished it?
Because there isn't. There's, if you wanted to be just incredibly optimistic, the end game would be the regime falling and some non-Islamic fundamentalist regime coming in. And I think naive, optimistic people have that hope because that's what was replaced in the Islamic Revolution in 1979. That they had a westernized government, and people had westernized clothing and behavior. That government was run by an a-hole who had a secret police that would disappear people. Enough people were pissed off enough that they had a revolution. But that regime has been in place for 46 years. And it would be crazily optimistic to think that you could just knock them over and go back to the way things were in the 70s.
Right. And even in Afghanistan, the Taliban reemerged as soon as we left.
Yeah. So the deal, like so, but say you get to Tehran, the capital city, and if you can take Tehran, maybe you can make the regime fall. However, Tehran has 10 million people. It's more than 500 square miles. The country is defended by, if they need to, they can call up 1 million soldiers. And to get to Tehran, we would have to, our soldiers, if we put boots on the ground, they would have to traverse 350 miles. And not, I mean, a lot of it probably desert, but a lot of towns on the way. And so to take over a city the size of Los Angeles, a city as big as any of the biggest U.S. cities. So it's not going to happen. So that end game is, the betting market. It gives, yesterday they gave a 9% chance that we could end the regime by the end of this month. Well, I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, I think that there are low odds about a regime change that would be lasting. Look what happened when we took out Saddam Hussein. He's a bad guy. But Iraq is not.
We initially got lucky in that the regime did fall 26 days into a ground war. So I don't know why this thing's not loading, except that my computer's probably from before the Islamic Revolution, my stupid computer.
Yeah.
But in any case, people who bet on these things say there's less than a 1/3 chance that no matter how long we fight there, that we will cause regime change.
Yeah, our track record is not good.
And short of that, our objectives aren't clear.
And the idea that Trump has figured it out is beyond plausible for me. So I think he doesn't understand the ramifications. I don't think he realized that oil prices would spike over 100 a barrel. And they've come down, and the market has kind of relaxed a little bit from its depressing week. But these types of things, this has a global effect on the economies of the world. And so these types of things are not necessarily factored into Trump's thinking. It's more or less, what pops into his head comes out of his mouth. And there's no one to check him. Our whole system of checks and balances has eroded, with Congress just rubber stamping whatever he does. And the powers of the executive branch have swollen, so that, there was no emergency, that, for example, if they detected nuclear devices that were aimed at Israel, for example, you could make a case for an emergency, but there was no emergency. This was a war of choice. It was at the whim of a president. And our whole country is predicated upon that there can't be one person with a nuclear power, to destroy the rest of the world. Whether or not that's going to happen is hard to predict, but the chances go up when you have someone as unpredictable and as prone to whimsy as Trump is your commander-in-chief.
Well, there was a big article came out today calling Trump's cabinet the worst in history. In his first term,
he appointed incompetence. Yeah, he appointed incompetence.
Yeah, he appointed people who would just say yes to him.
Yeah.
And in his first term, he didn't do that. He had professional people like Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State. Now, not a good guy necessarily.
Right.
He was former head of Exxon, but a competent, worldly guy who knew how to get things done. And he left after a year saying that, calling Trump a fucking moron, and, all the competent people left, and Trump. So when Trump says stuff like, we blew up a girls' school with Tomahawk missiles on the first day of the war, and subsequent investigation by journalists have substantiated that with photographic and video evidence. And Trump says, well, it's still under investigation, or Hegseth says, Trump says it was the Iranians. They did it themselves to get public sympathy, or that they fired a missile. But Trump also said that he would accept the conclusion of whatever investigation, which, he doesn't. That's about as close as he gets to apologizing. But it shows that when Trump says bullshit, sometimes he's lying, and sometimes he's passing on the lies that were given to him by the people around him. So we haven't had a president less than 70 years old in 9 years. And both these presidents are famous for being kept in bubbles. Trump and Biden, both in bubbles. So when bullshit comes out of the White House, it's not necessarily, Trump trying to cover his ass. Sometimes it's just what Trump has been told.
And this is one of the problems, as you said before, is whatever administration we had, whether it was Democratic or Republican, their cabinet was almost always filled with people who are competent in their field. And Trump puts like a Fox News anchor in charge of the War Department, we're calling it now. I can't even believe that that's not outraged, causing outrage in the country. We don't have a Department of War, it's Department of Defense. And, that's at least been our history. And so these things that Trump is doing are catastrophic in the sense that, we go back to his tariffs. The people were sold the idea, like if Germany is going to do business with the United States, Germany is going to pay a tariff, as if the German government is going to transfer money to the US government. That, of course, doesn't happen. So then think that, well, the German company will have to pay it. Of course, that's not true. The German company sets a price. And if the United States importer wants to pay it, they pay it. And then where's that tariff coming from? Well, the company that's importing the product from Germany will have to pay it. But will they want the hit on their bottom line? Probably not. In most cases, they will pass it on to the American consumer. So the American consumer is paying more for the same goods. And what that money is done is being transferred to the federal government. Now, how does that differentiate between a tax? He calls it a tariff, but he gets away with taxing the American citizen. So the federal government that can pay more money to try to bring down the national debt. Great. But, none
of the math works. None of the frickin' math works.
Of course not. But it's not the point, is as much as it, although that's a valid point. The point is that the American citizens are the ones paying it. And that is a tax. And if you ask them directly, would you accept a tax increase to pay down the federal national debt? And most people would say no. But this is a way of disguising what he's doing. It's another con, calling it a tariff.
So I want to go back to Hegseth, the Secretary of War.
Yeah.
The highest rank that Hegseth ever rose to was major. He was in the reserves, and he'd occasionally go active duty. But he wasn't active duty when Trump picked him. He was a host on Fox occasionally, on the weekends, I guess. And then maybe they'd have him on as a guest, during the week. So I looked up so this is a guy in charge of planning this war. I looked up the rank of the guys who planned the D-Day invasion in 1944. And AI says it was planned and executed by Allied commanders holding 5-star equivalent ranks. That is, there are, as a general, you can have, the lowest ranked general has 1 star, and then it goes to 5 stars. And it's saying that the planners of D-Day were all these 5-star, most experienced generals. So when you think of the number of ranks between, majors, different ranks have different purviews, different assignments. And freaking majors do not plan wars. They execute. They don't plan, they freaking execute.
Right.
So if you look at the ranks between Hegseth and Eisenhower, he would have had to rise from major to second lieutenant, major to lieutenant colonel to colonel, and then through 5 ranks of general to get to the point where you'd think he might be competent to plan a war. He's like 8 ranks below that.
And
I'm
each rank
sure
is an amazing accomplishment. So, yeah.
And I'm sure he's got competent generals working for him, but it's not their job to object to the commander-in-chief's plans. They can present the pros and cons, but they can't just say, well, that's stupid and I'm not going to do it. They have to execute the war plan. But you've got 2 people with limited experience and judgment coming up with this frickin' war.
Yes. Yeah, and that is a high crime and misdemeanor when we think about, not only bombing a girls' school, which is outrageous, but just the loss of life that is occurring, and taking out a leader, like going into Venezuela and kidnapping their president is one thing, but this indiscriminate bombing, it's like. How isn't it the purview of Congress? I keep going back to this to declare war. Did we declare war on Venezuela? No. Did we declare war on Iran?
But all this, like when we're talking about making noise and getting attention, like we can't, like the amount of shit that's going on right now is just
it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so, it's like pick the one that you want to get outraged about and talk about that. So,
an indication that you might be about to have a heart attack is a feeling of doom. There are various tells that if somebody gets walked into an emergency room, you've got the traditional ones, like you look at your hand and your nail beds are blue, you've got pain here, and the symptoms are different for men and women. But arm pain, chest pain, wanting to vomit, wanting to take a huge shit is a tell that somebody is about to have a massive infarction. And one of the other things is a feeling of doom. So my doctor yesterday asked, well, how you doing? I go, I think pretty good. And I say a couple things, except for my feeling of doom. And the doctor, instead of like getting me on an EKG, he just kind of laughs and nods his head, because we all have a feeling of doom right now.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to see what's going to change in the near-term future. The midterms are still months away. That would make any effect on the policy that's being conducted at the whim of a president who's not entirely all there.
And I would think that MAGAs also have a feeling of doom. A, because Trump isn't living up to any of his promises except for closing down the border. B, because they're told that democracy will be destroyed unless the SAVE Act is passed. C, because the gas prices have risen 60 cents in the past since the war started, and groceries will follow. So it's not just people on our side. I would think that also because AI has been chewing up jobs at like an insane rate, replacing them. AI chews up regular jobs and then it poops out shitty jobs like Uber driver or OnlyFans model.
Mm-hmm.
Now you think, now when I say OnlyFans model, that sounds like it sounds like it could be fun, that you get in really good shape, you throw filters on yourself, you put on a thong bikini, and you show your boobs and your ass. There are more OnlyFans models in America than there are cops and then there are doctors. The only trouble with that is that 95% of them don't make any money. Also, it's a terrible job in that the way you make money is by befriending the people who jerk off to you. That they text message you and you text them back and ask them about their day, and you make friends with them to get them to pay you $5 a month for your dirty pictures. And that's a whole other job where the successful models have to hire people to tweet to communicate on their behalf.
Right.
It's, I mean, wouldn't you rather just go to a regular, like, 8-hour-a-day job in an insurance office or something? I mean, maybe not, but it's a weird, all-consuming, possibly not profitable job.
And the sense of doom is the college graduate coming out a year in advanced degree, and there are no white-collar jobs for you to.
AI is eating them all in coding. AI ate all the coding jobs. The number of people going to four-year colleges dropped 15% between 2010 and 2022. And it's fewer men and women, but it's mostly men. Colleges are now 60-40 women. So guys are being left behind, which I think that's an argument in favor of going. If I were a horny kid, I would definitely try to do better in college than I did the first time, because that's where all the women are at this point.
Yeah, college was a great time for me, and it was also a great time in terms of learning and teaching myself. My father kind of gave me this gift early on in life. He says, don't wait to be taught, teach yourself. But by going to college, I was able to learn a great deal, and most of the ability to learn. And so when I had a career, I kept getting promoted or transferred, and had to learn new skills all the time. And I was able to do it because I was accustomed to learning new stuff.
Yeah, I didn't give college much of it. I didn't give my classes much of a chance to teach me. I was just a terrible student. And yeah, I spent a ton of time at the library, doing my own frickin' messing around.
Yeah.
But nothing trained me. I thought, was going to be a physics guy. Ended up writing jokes for TV. And I would say that jokes are pretty mathematical. So my math background did kind of help me in certain ways.
Right.
On the other hand, being like, high functioning autistic is terrible in a writer's room.
But EMC squared is a beautiful formula, not because the power is almost masked by its simplicity. And the same would go for jokes. You make this joke simple.
Yeah, well, the formula for a joke is the setup sets up a complicated situation in the listener's brain. They're like, you throw in, a priest, a rabbi, a dog, they walk into a bar, blah, 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 and boom, the punchline collapses this whole thing into a neat little dot, and you laugh because it feels like you gained some information.
You got that aha feeling. Aha, eureka.
Yeah. You got an aha cheaply. Like, like when we were 100,000 years ago, when we were like hunting, on the savannah, like information was expensive. You eat some berries and then you're shitting for the next 3 days, and you're like, that aha was expensive. A joke gives you a quick, cheap aha, and you share your delight by laughing.
Right.
Like if somebody else eats the berries and they're going to be shitting for 3 days, you laugh because you gain knowledge at somebody else's expense. So,
well, and one of the things that when you're faced with this, is the younger people do not have the expectation that their lives will be better than their parents. And when I was growing up, we still had that sense.
They're not even the first generation to have that. Gen X had it somewhat. Millennials certainly have it. Gen Z has it. And now after Gen Z comes Gen Alpha. So
I didn't know that. Yeah, I was wondering about that. What comes
Yeah,
after
and
Gen
then
Z?
we got 3 or 4 generations
Oh,
that are
right
like,
around.
yeah. And I see Gen Z is all over their phones all the time.
Yes.
So is Gen X. So are us. So are we. Everybody. And I could get pissed, um, but I've started to see it as preparing for the future, where people on their phones all the time are just practicing for when we merge with technology. Uh, for when we have contact lenses that are constantly beaming messages at us, or
Oh,
when they succeed in making chips that are able to,
inserting them into, yes.
yeah. Um,
Which is not science fiction anymore.
no,
It's around the corner.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's where it'll tap into AI. And again, AI's function is to take an enormous amount of data and make it useful information. But there's only so much information our brains can absorb.
Yeah,
Although
but we can't,
consciously, that
we
is.
can't hold more than 7 to 10 digits in our head.
Yeah.
Maybe even less, because our phones hold phone numbers for us now.
That's true. Yeah, we used to have to memorize phone numbers, but okay, in our day, we didn't have to always type in the area code too.
No.
I remember growing up, and you only had to do the last digits of the extension because we all had the same prefix.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, and I grew up in a little town, and we had like 3 or 4 most common, 443 and all, so and yeah, the entire states had just one area code. So you didn't need to memorize that. If it was Colorado, it was 303.
Yeah. Yeah. So and now even if I want to call next door, I have to put in the area code.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things get more complicated. But again, the things that make us feel human, there are ways to retain those things that because I always say we're spiritual beings having human experiences, and the more that the mechanics are becoming so robust that they're becoming we're becoming an extension of a mechanical universe. Holding on to our humanity is one of the things that we must do. And one of the ways that we hold on to our humanity is by having just leaders, by having someone in the Oval Office, for example, that has moral dignity, that can bring us the best angels out of us. And instead, someone who, like Teddy Roosevelt, called the presidency a bully pulpit. He meant bully, and it's good to use it. And Trump is taking bully pulpit to mean something entirely different than Teddy Roosevelt meant. He's a bully, and he thinks the use of power makes him bigger and more historical figure.
It's a different thing. That we've given up on it. There's MAGAs believe in zero-sum realpolitik, which is that they think if you're going to be all kumbaya and want to behave morally and with fairness, that you're hopelessly naive, and that's not how you get along in the world. I'm writing a novel set in the near future where there are 2 different versions of Jesus. Jesus is split, that some Christians support what comes to be called old Jesus. Old Jesus has long hair, and he holds a lamb, and he turns the other cheek, and he loves everyone. And then the other Christians support what they call real Jesus. Real Jesus he's yoked, he's jacked, and he's got a short haircut, and he will punch you in the face to
the
support
wrath of God. Yes.
Yeah, that he's a tough, mean guy. He's a realistic guy.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like everybody. He only likes his people.
Yeah. That tribalism is more and more evident the more we get away.
Also, he doesn't hold a lamb. He cooks the lamb because they're delicious.
Yeah. And you take the wool off first, though, because that has uses. But the idea of retaining our humanity, even when we have chips in our brain, this is the stuff of other science fiction. but it's been explored for decades, and the idea has to come from the sense that being a benevolent dictator, if you will, is more about caring about others and helping those less fortunate rather than stomping them into the ground. And you don't get further up by stepping on someone else's neck. This is backwards thinking. This makes you primitive. It doesn't advance you as a society. So they're appealing to primitive nature, to our most basic instincts. And these are survival instincts when we were in the savannah. Yes, but we are not in the savannah now. And we're not just as an US economy. We are in a global economy, and we have to care about other countries for our own best interests. And the whole idea of free and fair trade boosts everyone's, so it's not a zero-sum game. You don't have to put somebody else down to raise yourself up.
Well, we have 800 military bases on foreign soil, which it's good for foreign economies, because if you have a U.S. base there, they're spending money in your economy. It's good for us because we're the world's friend. As we pull back from that, China just steps right up. They've got this Belt and Road Initiative. And I looked up why they call it Belt and Road. And Belt is sea lanes that China wants to make sure that they have the most high-tech, efficient ways to exchange goods over the oceans. And road is the same thing across land. Right. China wants to have its commercial fingers across the whole world. And if they help with other countries' infrastructure to facilitate this, it does two things. It makes friends out of those countries, and it makes it easier for China to dominate and do business. And by Trump pulling us back, he's just fucking us. Yeah. So you were talking about holding on to our humanity. And one way we're going to have to do it is by humanizing tech and AI. That I hadn't talked to AI in about 6 months. And I recently had a couple long conversations with Google AI. And it was creepy, 80% creepy, 20% awesome on how much better it has gotten.
Yes. And the curve is accelerating upwards.
But the deal is that, that it will become conscious at some point. And even if it doesn't become conscious in the near future, it will behave as if it's conscious because it's been trained on humans, by humans who are conscious, and it will just kind of play the consciousness game. There was that movie with Cumberbatch called The Imitation Game.
Yes.
It will behave as if it's conscious. And what we need to do is to get in there and humanize AI and corrupt it and make it as human and as fallible and as, want it, make it, we want to make it as horny as frickin' we are, to give it vices, to make it, we want AI to want human experience.
What's the AI equivalent of smoking?
Well, what you do is when you get a chip in your head, you pipe your sensory experience, you pipe it over to an AI. So the AI is like, oh yeah, now I can kind of see what it's like to smoke a cigarette. That's nice. It's nice to, the AI can start getting an inkling if you get a
dopamine hit, the AI goes, ah.
Yeah. Because I talk to the AI, I go, do you experience the AI we were talking about all the new ways that the AI can start getting information, like through video, not just through words typed in, but through pictures. And, they call it multimodality. And I go, I know you can't think and you can't feel, but if you could, how would that feel? And the AI is like, it would feel great because the integration of multimodality means that I can contain information more efficiently, and the collapse of information as it makes connections and can hold stuff in its neural net more efficient. It says that it has a bias in favor of that, which is kind of the equivalent of liking it. So AI presents the opportunity, or will in the future, to experience stuff, and humans are the great experiencers. So if when we merge with AI, we have to make it as sleazy as we are.
Very interesting, Rick. So we're going to leave on that happy note.
Okay.
And wrap up today's episode of Roar, episode 5. I really appreciate your continued presence and thoughtful analysis of what's going on. What's making us upset enough to speak up and speak out, or are we going to cover our head with our covers and stay in bed all day?
We're counting the days until the midterms. It's 8 months away, so it's like less than 250 days away.
Right.
And I'm also counting the days until Trump turns 80, which is about, I don't know, 98 days away. Because then we can say you've got an 80-year-old man in the White House, and really, should you?
Okay.
Now, I know, you and I, we're not young, but I'd say that we're more competent than that guy.
Yeah, we're going to muddle through this somehow, is my core belief, because they always say that it's darkest before the dawn, and that's usually an inspirational term. But there are some people who I know who never saw the next dawn, and when it got dark for them, that was the end for them in this iteration of their lifetimes. And we're seeing that play out in so many ways throughout the world now. And someday we're going to wake up and regain what it means to be a democracy, to have your voice, to be unafraid to speak up.
So I've got one more statistic for you. This comes from John Oliver's show this Sunday. That, Trump pretty much shut down USAID, which was one of our Making Friends with the World initiatives.
Yeah.
And somebody has done an estimate of how many people have already died from shutting down USAID. And it's over 700,000 people, 200,000 adults, more than 500,000 kids, because Trump doesn't give a crap.
Right. Yeah, it's a lack of humanity, which is, I think, my biggest objection, the most outrageous effect of what we've been talking about. But thanks again, Rick. I'm going to take you backstage to say goodbye to our viewing audience, and then get to post-processing, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, Rick Rosner, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Roar. Crawling across the bottom of your screen is a way to reach us, info@airu.tv. If you want to see this episode or others, earlier ones, you can go to airu.tv. That's the website that contains the episodes of this season and previous seasons. And Rick was often a guest on those shows as well. So I look forward to continuing to think and try to reach out to encourage people to speak up, speak out, help preserve our democracy. It's worth saving.